The Israel-Hamas war sparking a vicious battle in Hollywood. Yes, Hollywood. Actor Jon Voight slamming actors Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz. First, in a letter published by a Spanish newspaper, Bardem and Cruz accused Israel of committing genocide. Then, firing back in an open letter of his own, Jon Voight accused Bardem and Cruz of inciting anti-Semitism and telling them they should hang their heads in shame. And joining us, our political panel, the Washington Times, Stephen Dinan, The Hill's A.B. Stoddard, and the Weekly Standard's John McCormick. Stephen, it's interesting to see that now this fight has expanded to Hollywood.
Yeah, you know, when Hollywood attacks is really what you've got here. I think the most interesting thing about this was how quickly both of the Oscar-winning actors retreated from their statements and said, well, we weren't actually trying to put our finger on the scale of the battle over there. It was a plea for peace, in their words. And Penelope Cruz, actually, in her response, her statement that she released later, actually went ahead and said, look, I'm not an expert on this. You know, that should probably be a warning. If you're not an expert on it, stay out of it in the first place.
You know, A.B., I agree with Stephen. I mean, Jon Voight just mowed them over. You know, I mean, it was pretty bad.
No, he did, and he said he didn't think that they were aware of the history of Israel, but
which is a pretty big put down. I mean,
right, but this is actually demographically we're seeing the highest criticism in this country. We're the most pro-Israel, and the highest criticism of Israel right now is coming from Europe, not from us, but among our youngest citizens are the ones who are the most critical on social media in this conflict of Israel. But what's interesting is even before Bardem put out this letter, he was, the Jon Voight letter came in, Bardem was already putting out a statement saying, people are calling my wife and I anti-Semites, and couldn't be further from the truth. And so even before they got scolded by Voight, they were already responding to a lashing.
But it's pretty weak when Penelope Cruz comes back and says, you know, I'm not an expert. You know, well, then, you know, you might want to back off that one. I mean, you might not want to get involved.
Hollywood stars like to get involved. I don't know if you've ever noticed this before.
It might be a new phenomenon, John.
I imagine she might feel a little different if Hollywood were having rockets rain down on it from Mexico. I think she might take the time to learn exactly what was going on there. You know, the idea that Israel is committing a genocide is pro-terrorist propaganda, and no one in the right mind could believe that. So it was nice to see Jon Voight come out there and just try to talk some sense into these people. I don't think there's any equivalency between intentionally killing civilians, which is what's happening in Syria, and unintentionally, which is what, you know, moral countries like Israel and the United States do. But I just can't imagine all these people are worked up right now who haven't said a single word about over 100,000 civilians intentionally killed in Syria, and yet they're just completely outraged about the unintentional, unfortunate killing of hundreds. And you don't care about civilians in that case. You clearly hate Israel if that's what you're doing.
I'm actually sort of struck by the silence in Hollywood on this one. You've got people like George Clooney, who I tip my hat to him when he goes after what's going on in the Sudan and Darfur. I mean they have done a lot of good, and they speak out, a lot of the celebrities. But this one, Stephen, there hasn't been, with the exception of this is the first I've heard. Joan Rivers was very outspoken, but you don't hear much from Hollywood on this so far.
Yeah, I imagine part of that is just you have two diametrically opposed, they now have to worry about an international audience for their movies and whatnot as well. You have such diametrically opposed views of that conflict there. In some cases, this is money to them. If you're annoying your fans in one place or another, you've got to worry about that.
I think they'd be smarter to stay quiet. I think Penelope Cruz and her husband have learned that. You have people like Joan Rivers and very strong supporters of Israel in Hollywood. At the same time, this couple in question, they're European, and this is where we're seeing the most criticism.
Is that the European defense?
Well, it's the most criticism of Israel right now is coming from Europe.
And do you think that's why they did that? I don't.
Well, that's their friends and family, and everyone they know in Europe feels, generally speaking, more critical than their friends in Hollywood, I would imagine.
You'd love to know who talked them into doing this, because it was a totally unforced error. They could have stayed silent, whatever prompted them to do this, and then come out and say, we're not experts, don't pay attention to us. It ends up very embarrassing.
And it is such a tragedy what's going on over there. I mean, you speak to all the people that are getting hurt over there. I mean, I don't know. Oh, well, right? Hollywood. But Jon Voight, obviously, he scared them. He scared them quiet. Anyway, he got a reaction.
But he always does.
He always does. Anyway, panel, thank you.